use your God power to get everything you ever wanted and live the life of your dreams. The Master's Course. Copyright 2010 by Richard Lee McKim Jr. All rights reserved. Let the quest for knowing begin. Representations and their relationships. An old clock radio can explain the human body. What? As I said at the beginning of this chapter, we would be revisiting this concept of representations later when we had more interesting information to work with. Well, now you have heard about fingers that see, skin that flattens bullets, fingers that won't burn in a candle flame, people who can taste what is in someone else's mouth, and people who can live without eating or drinking for more than 30 years. Something is definitely going on here. The first thing I want to do is to show you the details of how the older radios were tuned to a station using a representation system. I'm going to be taking apart an old radio that I had from when I was a kid. I won't say just how long ago that was. The first thing we can see is that it has a list of numbers that indicate what station it is tuned to. When the pointing needle is in a certain position, a certain music station will begin to play from the speaker. If the bottom right-hand knob is turned in one direction or another, it will cause the needle to move to a different place and different music will begin to play out the speakers. Of course, there are a lot of places, quote-unquote, on the dial that have no music and only play static. Okay, let's look at this illustration here. It says outside representation as you see it. Now this is a typical clock radio. We got the clock section there, which was kind of newer because you can see it's like an LED clock there. The tuning indicator, which is typical for the older radios, has got the numbers across it and a mechanical needle that moves across in front of it. Here it says the radio station and the music is located here. So it's pointing to a place on the dial where there's actually a music station. And of course we got the tuning knob. Okay, that's a typical radio. Okay, we'll continue. However, that was just the outside, the part you could see. It was the representation that you worked with to interact with the radio. On the inside, out of sight, was an elaborate system of strings and pulleys that converted the representation and conveyed the representation's message to the place where the real tuning was going on. This is the place where all real action and real tuning is going on. And it's got a little arrow there pointing to a little device on the circuit board there. This transparent square thing pictured on the right is a variable capacitor which sits in the middle of the circuit board. When it is rotated from one position to another, it changes its values and the frequency that it is tuned to changes as a result. The shaft that needs to be rotated and adjusted to cause it to change frequencies comes out the bottom of the circuit board underneath it. Okay, we have another picture here at the bottom. Okay. As you can see in this picture, there is quite an elaborate system of pulleys and strings that connect the tuning knob, the tuning needle, and the actual real tuner on the circuit board. The black pulley on the bottom of the circuit board is connected to a shaft coming through the circuit board from the variable capacitor that is on the other side, pictured above. As the tuning knob is turned, it moves the string and causes everything to start moving in one direction or the other. As the string moves right, the needle moves right, and the capacitor's black pulley rotates to the right. Okay, let's look at these illustrations. Okay, let's look at this middle one here where we've seen the bottom of the circuit board. It's got the black pulley and the strings. You can see it's quite an elaborate system. Now, that variable capacitor that's pictured up there on the right, that little square clear thing, is on the top side of that circuit board with a shaft coming through the board. Now, as that pulley's connected to the shaft, so as it turns one way or the other, it's actually tuning. That's where the tuning is really going on, is right there in that little box. Now, these strings are an elaborate way to convert the electrical tuning there into a mechanical operation that you can see and interact with. So, as you turn the dial, as you can see in this bottom picture, as you turn the dial to the right, it rotates the string around, pulls the needle over, and at the same time, it causes the black pulley to rotate, adjusting the capacitor. Now, this is the interesting thing. In order for this to work perfectly, that string has to be adjusted exactly right. I mean, every single thing on that has to be perfect. Because otherwise, when you turn that dial, if the string is not adjusted right, the needle's not going to go to the place where the tuning capacitor is going to go. So it has got to be in sync. But when it's working perfectly, which of course it is most of the time, then wherever the needle is pointing indicates where the capacitor is adjusted to, where the actual real tuner is adjusted to. But what's important about these illustrations here is you've got the representation, which is the part you see and interact with. That's the physical part. When you turn that dial, you're communicating a meaning in a physical way. That you're moving that dial in a physical way to a new place. And what's happening is in an electronic way, or in the that's being translated in the real tuning language, which is an adjustment in the electronic values. And the way those values are truly adjusted is by that variable capacitor on the bottom. Okay. The interesting thing about this representation system is that you can turn the official tuning knob and make the needle move to a new place, or you could just grab the needle itself and physically move it to the new location. In both cases, the variable capacitor would be turned to the right setting, and the station would be there at that location, and the music would begin to play. You could even turn the variable capacitor pulley, and it would still move the string. It would all move the perfect amount, and it would still work perfectly. Even though on the outside, quote unquote, you have no idea that it is working this way, it doesn't matter. When everything is working as it is supposed to, the way that it really works is of no consequence, and it is not important to know. All you know is that certain stations are at certain places on the dial, and when you want to hear them, you move the dial to that location where the station is. It all works together seamlessly and perfectly for the life of the radio. Okay, let's take a look at this illustration. Here it says here, here's a picture of an even older radio showing the tuning string system. Okay, now we have this older one. Now the variable capacitor on this one, if you take a look at it, is the big fin-looking thing. It's got aluminum fins on it. And as those fins mesh, it changes the values of it. Now the newer one, which is still old by today's standards, is this little square clear box over here on the one we've been working with. Now if you notice on this older radio, this really old radio, it's got a giant pulley, and it's got a string that comes across the top, and once again it's got the same dial, so you still got a mechanical mechanism, which is the representation dial, which shows where the radio station is in a representative way. The radio station is not on that dial. The radio station is in the variable capacitor, so to speak. That's where the tuning is really going on. It's just that the representation shows you in a physical, visible way what the tuning capacitor is up to, where it's at. It just indicates. So you see, once again, you got the pulleys in both places, you got the variable capacitor in both places, and the tuning dial in both places. Okay, now,
options. Now activating the next video play options. One moment please. Click on the green arrow to start watching the next video. Or, click on the red arrow to start watching the prior video. Or, click on the tan arrow to go to the main course menu and guide, with links to all course chapters, excerpts, and special reports. Up next, special video options. Click on your choice of course videos, menus, and excerpts. Now switching to the special video options menu and activating the video selection buttons. Click on your selection number to start watching the video. "15 seconds till we switch to the next page with the free download information. Pause the video now if you need more time to review the available selections." This is the end of this course video. Its video number is listed above. To watch the next video, simply click on the next video in number sequence. Thank you.